Good morning, everyone who's joining us for this webinar. We'll get started at 11. So right now, kick back, enjoy a drink, your coffee, or what have you. This is going to be a very interesting, very informative webinar that is being offered to us by the Federal Trade Commission and specifically by Maricela Segura. So we're very happy to have you with us, and we'll get started very soon.
Good morning, everybody.
Once again, for those who are just joining us, thank you. We're going to get started very soon. We're just waiting for more people who have registered to join us, and we'll also get started with the Facebook Live. So thank you for being with us. We'll get started soon. Let me connect to Facebook Live and we'll get started in a second. And thank you for your patience. For those of you who have joined us already, we'll get started in a second. Okay. I guess we're ready. Let me stop the share so we can see our guest speaker for today. So thank you everyone who has joined us for this presentation on consumer fraud and taking a look at patterns that have taken place in the Central Valley and the nation as a whole. Our guest speaker for today is Maricela Segura from the Federal Trade Commission. So I would like to thank Maricela for agreeing to do this webinar for Central Valley partner organizations. And also we know that there are other organizations, other representatives from other parts of California joining us today. So thank you very much, Maricela, for taking the time to be with us today, for preparing the presentation. I had the opportunity to see it beforehand, obviously, and I think you have lots of very valuable information that is going to be of relevance to those of us who work with immigrants and other minority communities, low-income families, and obviously residents here in the Central Valley. So thank you very much, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Dr. Martinez. I'd like to thank CVIIC for organizing this webinar. I'm Maricela Segura, as Dr. Martinez mentioned, with the Federal Trade Commission, and we're always really gratified to share information on fraud trends in our area, and also tips on how to avoid those frauds, which we would love for you all to pass forward to those people that you serve, that you work with your families. And so I'll share some of that today. If you could put the slides, next slide, please.
Sure. What we'll do also, if for everyone who's joining us, if you could please write down your name and your organization in the chat box, we'll really appreciate it. And we'll get started with the presentation.
Terrific. So if you could show the slides, great. So I will say you will be controlling my slides, so I'll be saying next slide, please, from time to time. So if we could go to the next slide.
And this is where sometimes we have some problems with my computer. So just be patient with me, please. It's not moving.
Well, I'll talk about what the next slide is. Just basically an introduction of who I am again, but I'll give a little bit of introduction of the Federal Trade Commission. Sure.
Eleazar, do you have it in your computer?
Yes, I have it.
Okay, let me stop share, and if you could share.
Okay.
Yes, sorry about this, but this is one of the glitches with my specific computer. Sometimes I get this problem.
No problem. But I do have to share, I have a disclaimer to make. So the Federal Trade Commission is run by 5 commissioners who get to vote on what we do, on the kinds of law enforcement actions we take. So the first disclaimer is that any views I express today are my views alone. They are not the views of the commission or any of our commissioners. We are an independent federal agency that's run by 5 commissioners, 3 of whom are on the Republican side of the aisle, and 2 of whom are on the Democratic side of the aisle. And so we are a bipartisan commission. And so I see the slides up. And so that is just my contact information. I'm Maricela Segura. I'm regional director of the Federal Trade Commission's Western Region Los Angeles office, and we have regional offices at various places throughout the country. We have eight of them. Los Angeles is one. We have another one in San Francisco, and then that is my email. Next slide, please. So this is what I'm going to talk about today, the FTC in brief. I'll share some complaint data from metro areas in and around the Central Valley in California. Talk a little bit about how age affects, what the data show us on fraud loss over age. We're going to talk about COVID-19 complaints that we're seeing, the trends that we're seeing in California and the nation. We'll talk a little bit about the COVID-19 frauds more specifically, FTC's enforcement actions that we've taken against scammers. I'll share some resources we have for consumer education, and then finally discuss Reportfraud.ftc.gov, which is basically our complaint database, but I don't want to call it just a complaint database. It's where people can report fraud, whether or not they're victims of it. If they see a fraud out in the community, we want to hear about it. So just a broad overview of the FTC generally. We are a civil law enforcement agency, so we are not a criminal law enforcement agency. Our office, FTC in LA, we are within the Bureau of Consumer Protection. The Bureau of Consumer Protection, we investigate deceptive and unfair business practices. We bring cases against companies we think are violating the law. We investigate companies as well. In addition to our law enforcement, we promulgate certain rules to regulate industries, such as the telemarketing sales rule, and we also manage the do not call list and other rules. We also, as I mentioned, provide consumer and business education. One important thing about us is that we don't mediate disputes between consumers and companies. So when we receive a fraud report, that is data we look at to see trends in where the rising scams are happening, where scams are on the rise, look at industries that are problematic. But we do not reach out to the company on behalf of the consumer. And in fact, we don't bring cases on behalf of individual consumers. We bring cases on behalf of the federal government, but it is cases where we see widespread fraud committed by, a particular company or group of people. Other entities will reach out to companies on behalf of consumers. I know the Better Business Bureau will do that. So certain state AGs will also share a complaint they receive from consumer with the company, but we don't. What we do is that we make our fraud complaints available to law enforcement throughout the country. So there are over 700 local, state law enforcement agencies and regulators that have access to our complaint data, and they can use that to inform their own investigations and law enforcement efforts. Next slide, please. So our consumer report data is available to the public on a website called Public Tableau. That's a long URL. If you Google Tableau Public Federal Trade Commission, it should come up in your search results. The reports we make available are across various areas. You see the little snapshots there on the slide, which is, do not call, the reports that we receive on do not call complaints. We have a new set of reports that are just focused on COVID-19 and stimulus complaints. We have figures that are about fraud generally across the country, and also where you can find information on the metro area that you are living in. And so if you go to the next slide, so the next slide is a snapshot of our complaint data that's available to the public, and this is by metro area. So what I did is, we don't have a complete overlay like complaints by Central Valley, but what I did is I selected certain metro areas in or around the Central Valley. I selected 11 metros. These include Fresno, Hanford, Merced, Madera, Modesto, Stockton, Vallejo, Salinas. And what it shows are the top 5 fraud trends that we saw back in 2019. And the top 5 categories are the same in 2018, although the order is a little different. And I'm just going to explain what the fraud trends are. Oh, and just a word about metro areas. A metro area is an area with a population of 100,000 or more. So some small towns might not be counted as a separate metro area for purposes of our map. So the top category of fraud here in 2019, it's still a top 5 category now, is imposter scams. And so what these are is when someone pretends to be a trusted person to get the consumer to send them money or give personal information. And this cuts across the board. So these examples of this include when people claim to be working with the government or affiliated with a government agency, like the IRS scams. These also include scammers posing as a friend or relative, claiming that they need emergency money or money for an emergency. So you have to send them the gift card numbers, or you have to send them a money transfer. These are scammers posing as a romantic interest. So some of these are called romance scams, where online, they might find you on a platform, a dating platform, and someone's like completely fake, but they pretend to be a romantic interest, and they try to get money from folks by having this online relationship. But it also, imposter scams includes, computer tech scams. So these are where you might get a pop-up on your computer from somebody posing as being from Microsoft, saying, we understand your computer has a virus. We need permission. Click here to allow us permission to scan your computer for viruses. And what will happen then, often, if it's a scammer, they will actually lock up your computer and ask for a ransom in order to give you your data back or give you access to your computer back. So that's all under the bucket of imposter scams, and it's the top category of fraud in the Central Valley metros that I selected. The next category are telephone and mobile services. This includes everything from getting those unsolicited text messages, if you have problems with a mobile application or download, say malware is put onto your phone, misleading prepaid phone card offers. Sometimes we get these prepaid phone card offers that sound and actually are too good to be true, and they're misleading on the price that they're charging. So that would be under the bucket of telephone and mobile services. If you find unauthorized charges on your phone bill or charges for calls you did not make, that also would be included in this category, among other things. Online shopping and negative reviews. This covers when you're shopping online and there are undisclosed costs that you didn't expect, or when a company fails to deliver products on time or doesn't deliver at all, or when a company refuses to honor, say they offer a guarantee on purchases made online, but they refuse to offer it. And it also can include undisclosed fees or fees on a continuity plan. So when you make one purchase, for instance, you think you're buying one thing, and little did you know there was a box checked and you're being charged on a monthly basis going forward. So that would be under online shopping, negative reviews, prizes, sweepstakes, and lotteries. That's pretty self-explanatory. These are these fake sweepstakes, these fake lotteries. Sometimes we see instances of where supposedly you won a free prize, you won a prize, but you have to pay some money in order to get the money, like maybe open an account or provide some money to open an account so they can deposit the $10,000 that you won. And it's all fake. They're just doing it to get the money that you have to pay. Internet services is also a top category, and this is when people are having problems with websites, difficulty canceling online, when you have problems with your internet provider, if they're charging you fees that you didn't agree to, or you have network problems. Also, undisclosed charges would fall under here too. Next slide, please. So this is also a snapshot of the metro area, the 11 metro areas in and around the Central Valley so far this year. It's quarter 3. Again, it's the same top 5 categories, but the order of the number 1 is different. Right now, it's mobile, telephone and mobile services are in the top spot, with imposter scams being the second highest complaint or report getter for the Central Valley metros. Next slide, please. This is just a snapshot of data we have available on national trends from all of 2019. And the data is interesting, and it's interesting to us, and it's interesting to other law enforcement partners. What it shows is, well, one, we received last year 3.2 million reports, 1.7 million were squarely within what we'll call fraud. Not all of the reports we receive are about fraud. They might be about, maybe you're having trouble with your telephone company. You're not claiming that they committed fraud, but that they're not maybe abiding by their rules, or that they didn't disclose something properly, or maybe they're just giving you a hard time, or you're unhappy with the service. We get a lot of reports that aren't squarely fraud, but we get a lot of fraud reports. What the data tell us is that if you go to the next slide, the national complaint trends, they don't show that. Sometimes there's a thought that older adults might fall for fraudulent schemes more than younger adults, and that's not what we're seeing. The only difference we're seeing between younger people reporting fraud and older people reporting fraud is that younger people actually ended up reporting that losing money to fraud more often than older adults. But when older adults have lost money to fraud, they lose more money. So you could actually see it broken down across age brackets. So between age 20 to 29, the folks who reported fraud, the average amount lost was about $448. Once you get to the 80 plus range, it gets to be about average $1,600 of loss. So fewer older adults fall for fraud, but when they do, they pay more. And then the next slide, I think, is just another snapshot of digging down deeper into this. So this is just a look at the 20 to 29-year-old fraud reporters and how they have reported not just how much they lose on average, but also how the payment method. So, they report that they paid, online or through a mobile payment, and that they were actually defrauded online as well, as opposed to by telephone. So the next slide shows us, now this shows us a breakdown for folks in the 70 to 79-year-old group. And what they're reporting is that they lose more money, about $600 on average. The way that they pay for that, the way they've lost the money, is by credit card, but also gift cards. The highest percentage, by the way they were contacted by fraudsters, was over the phone versus online, which is a contrast to the 20 to 29-year-old group. Now, next slide. Now, this year, obviously, we've now started gathering data on COVID-19 complaints that we receive. And our complaints, we don't have this divided into metro areas as we do the generalized fraud complaints in the slides that you just saw. But over California, you can see what the COVID-19 complaint trends are. So the way we categorize our COVID-19 complaints, these are reports that mention COVID. They might mention the word stimulus. They might mention N95 or other terms related to PPE. There are a lot of people right now complaining about being promised delivery of personal protective equipment, but not getting it. This also includes these identity theft data that we get, where people mention that their identity was stolen pursuant to some COVID-19 scheme or pursuant to some stimulus-related scam. And you can see there that the complaint categories are online shopping, and that's what I covered before, vacation and travel. And so what does vacation and travel mean? Vacation and travel subcategory, in a non-COVID environment, typically this is related to the sale and advertising of a vacation, where you say, okay, I was sold a vacation package and they claimed it was going to be X, and it turned out not to be X, or they didn't disclose that it was, it was a motel, not a hotel, or whatever. In the COVID-19 area, what we're seeing, it's primarily about refunds and cancellations, where people are trying to cancel pre-planned trips and they feel like the company that's offering the trip, or the hotel, is withholding their money or not providing them a refund when they should be. Sometimes that is per a policy that's in writing, and sometimes consumers claim that there was something misleading about or that the company is not living up to the promises of its own policy. So that's what we're seeing in vacation and travel. A lot of complaints from people that aren't getting refunds or are having trouble canceling pre-planned vacations. So this shows that the top category is online shopping. Many people right now are shopping online as opposed to in brick and mortar stores. And a lot of these complaints relate to the non-delivery of protective equipment or things that they might need right now. But it also relates to people falling, and I'll talk about this in a minute, purchasing these fake cures and fake preventative measures that are just basically snake oil being sold online. In California, we see that people have reported over $22 million in loss since the pandemic started, and we've received over 21,000 reports on fraud from Californians. The next slide will show our national COVID-19 stats. So overall, we've received over 241,000 reports on COVID-19 scams and frauds. People have reported since the beginning of the pandemic losing over 177 million to these kinds of schemes. And this is significant. We have in 2019, we received 886,000 reports of fraud. So now our COVID complaints that we're receiving are about 27% of all the complaints we received last year. So COVID fraud is on the rise. It's a thing. Overall, our complaint stats for this year don't outmatch the complaint stats from last year. It just shows that the types of frauds that are being perpetrated on the public has just shifted to the situation, which is what we see from our experience in consumer protection, is that the fraudsters follow headlines and they will tailor the fraud to the moment. So we're not seeing more fraud, at least as far as our complaint data shows, but we're just seeing different fraud. And so now I'll just talk a little bit about what we're seeing. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, scammers do follow the headlines. As these headlines change, so too will the scams. And we know this from health emergencies to natural disasters. Whatever is happening in the moment, there will be someone that will set up shop to deceive people, claiming to be part of whatever it is, an emergency effort or some kind of effort to help in a natural disaster. So we really urge the public to share what they're seeing. We want to know what's happening out there, and we want to keep on top of these trends, not just for our enforcement, not just so that we can investigate companies and sue them, but it also informs our outreach and our education of the public. If we don't know what's happening, then we're not going to be able to stay on top of telling people what to be on alert for. So we really urge you all to report any frauds you see to Reportfraud.ftc.gov. And I'll talk about that in a little later today. That's a new website that we've recently launched, which makes it even easier to report scams to the FTC. And I'll talk about the features of that website. Next slide, please. So what are the frauds we're seeing right now? Well, we're seeing frauds that fall into certain buckets. We'll call this treatments and cures. So there are people that are hawking fake treatments and cures for COVID-19, everything from vaccine offers. In the beginning, we saw people offering home test kits when those were not readily available. Those were not available to the public. Now some are, but not as widely as people are selling them. So we also see that fraudsters are targeting people on Medicare and claiming that they can get a special access to testing or special access to treatments if they're on Medicare, and that's just a complete scam. And I'll say is that the federal government or the FDA isn't going to call you by phone. They're not going to send you a text and ask you to pay money to be part of some special trial or to offer you something special on testing that's not offered to the general public. If you get a call like that from somebody claiming to be from the federal government and they're asking for your personal information or they're asking for your financial information, hang up the phone. That is a scam. They're just not going to do that. They're not going to call you out of the blue and ask you for your personal information or for money. So, the takeaway tip is just ignore online offers and telephone offers for vaccines, preventions, or cures. If it's too good to be true, it is. Like right now, I guess I'll just leave you with this. If there's a medical breakthrough, a cure for COVID-19, you're not going to hear about it for the first time in an ad or a sales pitch. That's not how you're going to hear about it. It's going to be newsworthy. So I would say ignore all of these false pitches over the phone or online. Next slide, please. Another category of fraud we're seeing are these email and text scams and malicious websites. We're seeing that scammers are sending emails or texts, and what they're trying to do is get people's personal information or money, or they're trying to load malware onto people's computer. So this is an example of a fake World Health Organization email that would, if you click there where it says safety measures, it would have actually downloaded malware onto your computer. We see that scammers have bought up tons of domain names that include the word coronavirus and even include misleading spellings of certain words or organizations. So they'll just misspell an organization name and they'll set up a website so that folks will fall for it. If you visit one of these sites and you click on the links or you click on the link to download something, it's likely that it'll put malware on your device. So here's a tip: that don't click on links from sources that you don't know. If you're not sure, you want to know if it's a trusted source, so let's say you get this email from the World Health Organization. You're not sure if it's real or not. Go to the actual site for the World Health Organization to find out. Try and also make sure that your anti-malware and antivirus software is up to date on your computer, but don't click a link from a source you don't know that comes to you from email. Sometimes we've seen this a lot in like special offers from, like, say, Best Buy. They're offering you a coupon, and if you don't have some kind of special, like a relationship with Best Buy where you're getting these coupons regularly by email, but you get one out of the blue by text, don't click on that. Go to the Best Buy website to find out the truth. Next slide, please. There are lots of robocalls happening, and a lot of them are now switching the pitch to fit the moment of coronavirus. And more people are working from home. They might be picking up more calls that they wouldn't usually answer if they were in the office. I think it just means overall we're all receiving more robocalls. And so scammers have been quick to pick up on this coronavirus business. And so what they'll do is they'll call and they will offer, a fake cure, or they'll offer prevention or test kit. Again, they'll pretend to be, from Medicare, and they're offering a special deal for older adults on Medicare or adults or people on Medicare. And they'll offer it over the phone, and all they want is your personal information, or maybe they want you to pay them over the phone for special access, and just hang up the phone. We see it. They're offering, they're pretending to be from the Social Security Administration or the IRS. The Social Security Administration or the IRS, they will not call you over the phone and ask you for personal information. They are not going to ask you for money. Some of these calls will say, just press 1 to get off our call list. And I'm here to say, do not press 1. If you press 1, all that does is confirm that you are a live number. It's a live number, and it just tells the scammers that there's someone on the other line, and you'll get more calls. Press 1 will not take you off the call list. So our tip there is just ignore these calls coming to you. The IRS will not call you through robocall, nor will the Social Security Administration. So just hang up the phone. Next slide, please. Oh, the economic impacts payments. So we see, the CARES Act, the Coronavirus Aid Relief Economic Act, and many people we know have received some really much needed relief under the CARES Act. But scammers are following that very closely. And what they're doing is they're pretending to be part of the federal government and offering, money to people over the phone. Again, that's a scam. You're not going to get an offer of relief over the phone or through some unsolicited text. And they're also posing as the Small Business Administration, offering, special access to programs such as the Paycheck Protection Program or special debt relief. Again, these are not going to come to you by way of a robocall or unsolicited telephone call or unsolicited text. And if you're in doubt, if you are concerned that you might be missing out on some kind of relief, go straight to the source. Go to the Small Business Administration website. Go to the IRS website and try to find out the truth. But don't engage with somebody who calls you or texts you out of the blue, because 9 times it's a scam. 10 times out of 10, it's a scam. If they're calling you out of the blue or texting you out of the blue. And certainly if they're asking for your personal information, like your social security number or financial information, it's a scam. Next slide, please. So we also see that there are fake charities that pop up. This comes up a lot when we have national disaster or some other kind of crisis. Before you pay, before you give, do a little homework. One place you can check on a charity would be ftc.gov/charity. We list organizations that are known and trusted. You can do some research there. You might also research the charity's website itself to find out if it's a real charity. But just do your homework before you give, because you want to make sure you're dealing with a real charity and not just some fraudster. Next slide. Work from home scams. The Better Business Bureau, and there might be actually a Better Business Bureau partner on this webinar today. The Better Business Bureau recently released a report showing that the work from home scams are on the rise. Many people right now are unemployed. And with the virus numbers still high, folks are really tempted by these ads that are offering a variety of work from home jobs. They say you can work online. Maybe you're stuffing envelopes. Maybe you're processing rebates. Maybe you're processing billing, medical billing, and more. So we're seeing that scammers are posing as these fake businesses offering a work from home scheme. We've heard about a scheme where scammers are saying you could be a reshipper. So what you're doing is supposedly you're going to receive packages, take them out of the box, rebox them, put a shipping label, and send them forward to the end user. And what we think is happening with these reshipping schemes is that you're actually receiving goods that were stolen or purchased with some stolen credit card, and you're just kind of a middle person for almost like a mule, like passing forward stolen goods. So just be wary. Many of these jobs that are offering that you can make a lot of money at home, online, are scams and don't deliver on the claims they make. To try to find out the truth, to find out legitimate job listings, try visiting websites like your state's Career One Stop. California has a Career One Stop. And also, don't fall for ads that claim to have previously undisclosed federal government jobs. You might see someone pitching, oh, well, we have the list of government jobs that nobody else can see because these were undisclosed, or we have the special in. That's not true. If you want to find, say, a federal government job, you can go to usajobs.gov. We see a lot of folks thinking that they're going to get a special in or a special undisclosed list of federal government jobs, and it's just not. It's just a scam. And if you are still concerned with a company that you might be doing business with, you might check with your state attorney general to find out if they've received complaints about that company, or your local consumer protection agency. You can also check them out on the Better Business Bureau website to see what kind of rating that company has. On the next slide. Mortgage scams. Back in 2008, during the economic downturn, we saw a huge rise in mortgage foreclosure rescue scams. We anticipate, and we're already starting to see some of that come back now. And so these are fraudsters who are promising homeowners that they can change the terms of their loan to reduce their monthly payment, or that they may offer to do an audit of their loan documentation, to challenge the loan documentation to see if they can find a legal loophole. Or they say that they're going to take other steps to save your home from foreclosure. Unfortunately, many companies that are pitching these services, they're complete fraud. If they are asking, one of the best ways to spot a scam is to remember this: you never pay up front for this type of help. It's illegal for companies that are seeking to help you with your mortgage to charge you up front for that help. This is called debt relief, and relief companies are forbidden from charging an upfront fee. So you don't have to pay someone for mortgage help until they deliver the results that they have promised. So that's one way to spot a scam, is that you don't have to pay up front. And then always remember, you can contact your mortgage servicer to see if they have offers, if they can match whatever offer you're seeing out in the public, whatever offer this person, this company is pitching you. Call your mortgage servicer to see if they can help you in the same way. And oftentimes your mortgage servicer will also have information of frauds that are being perpetrated on the company, and may even have information on the very company that you're dealing with. So that's often a good way to check whether you're talking to a reputable company as well. Next slide, please. I'll just say a little bit about debt collection. I mean, given the tough financial impact this pandemic is having on so many of us, your clients might be getting behind, or the people that you work with or family members might be getting behind on payments. And so this means that debt collectors might start calling. The general advice we give on debt collection is, well, for one, if you owe a debt, you may want to talk with the debt collector at least once, even if you're not sure you owe the debt, because you can get information on the debt that you purportedly owe. So if you don't think you owe the debt, you might just want to ask the caller about information on the debt. And sometimes you can clarify that it actually is not yours. So that's one way to confirm that whether the debt is really yours or not. And if it is your debt, the debt collector needs to give you more information about it. You can ask. And you also may be able to work out a payment plan with this debt collector, or an agreement to reduce the amount of the debt if it is truly yours. There are also lots of rules that apply to debt collection that debt collectors have to follow. And so if they're not following these rules, we ask that you report it to us, the Federal Trade Commission, at Report Fraud. But just remember that they can't call you super early in the morning or late at night. So they can't call before 8 a.m. or past 9 p.m. They can't use profanity. They can't threaten violence or harass you. They certainly can't lie to collect the debt, or pretend to be someone they're not. In some instances, disreputable debt collectors pretend to be from the government, or they pretend to be from the police. They can't threaten you with arrest or deportation. That's a surefire, that's a sure sign that you're dealing with an unlawful debt collector, if they're threatening to have you arrested or deported. And they can't tell anybody about your debt except for your spouse or your lawyer. So they can't call your boss, for instance, and tell your boss that you owe a debt. They can't call your neighbors or anyone else besides your spouse or lawyer. And they can't call you at work. So if they know, and you need to tell them, if they're calling you at work, you can say, this is my work number, you cannot call me at work. Next slide, please. If the calls become too much, you can send a letter to the debt collector to tell them to stop contacting you. You can send it via certified mail with return receipt. That's often a good way to verify that you actually sent the letter. If you don't want to go to the post office, just make sure that you keep a copy of the letter for your own records and a note as to when you sent it, and keep it in your files. Once the debt collector receives your letter asking them not to contact you anymore, they can only contact you to confirm once, at least to confirm that they're going to stop contacting you by phone. And after that, they have to contact you in writing. But one thing to remember, even if you ask a debt collector to stop calling you, it doesn't cancel out the debt. So you might still, you might still owe the debt, and you still should work out a way to pay the debt. Doesn't mean that you're not going to be sued on the debt. So what we do urge you to do is to try to work out a payment plan if you in fact owe a debt. But there are ways that you can protect yourself from harassment and at least get information to find out whether the debt is actually your debt in the first place. Next slide, please. And this isn't so much a slide about fraud, but it's just kind of a nice way to think through anything that we see with so much information flying around. Some of it is good, some of it's not. And it's hard to tell the difference between reliable information and just completely false information. And so to try to sort it out, we urge people to think critically. And I'm passing this forward to you to urge your friends, families, clients to think critically before acting on a message. And so, 3 questions. Who is this message from? Do you know them? Do you trust them? Are they calling you out of the blue? Is it some stranger? And considering all the fake emails and texts and the phone calls that I've talked about, it could be a completely fake message. Then ask yourself, what do they want me to do? Are they trying to urge me into action immediately? Do they want me to pay money? Do they want me to give over my personal information, like my social security number, date of birth? If they do, that's often a sign of a scam, because people who are calling and reaching out to help you don't need your personal information. They don't need you to pay them money to help you. And then finally, what's the evidence behind this message? So this is just an urge to do your research. Don't act on something right away. Hang up the phone, take a moment, do some fact checking from sources that you trust. Even if you think that the message you're receiving is from a real source and it's something that's real, do your homework. Find out, try to do some digging and get some evidence to support what the person on the other side is saying. One way, if it has something to do with coronavirus, whether it's relief money or anything else, go to the federal government website, usa.gov/coronavirus. And this will provide you links for federal, state, and local government resources and help out there for individuals. That's a good place to go to check the facts on coronavirus relief. Next slide, please. I'm going to pivot a little bit and talk about our law enforcement efforts. So as I mentioned, we're a civil law enforcement agency, which means that we investigate and bring cases. When coronavirus hit, we really just saw a steep uptick in people complaining about these coronavirus scams. And so what we try to do is stop it, nip it in the bud. And so we started doing things that we don't often do. We started sending warning letters, letting those companies know that we're on the lookout. We see something that doesn't look quite right, and that they have 24 hours to give us information to back up their claims, or we were going to take the next step of enforcement. And so the FTC's attorneys and investigators have been working closely with other agencies such as the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, to find companies that were breaking the law. In the early days, we saw lots of folks pitching fake cures and prevention. So we sent warning letters. We've sent over 180 warning letters, some of them to companies that are makers of like teas, essential oils, or even colloidal silver that supposedly help prevent or cure coronavirus. And we asked them to back up the claims. And we actually gave them 48 hours to respond. But we've also sent warning letters to multi-level marketing businesses, which with multi-level marketing opportunities that are related to coronavirus. There were some companies who were offering financing that was supposedly related to coronavirus relief, some federal government program, and we've asked them to back up, to give us the information behind those claims. We sent warning letters even to a hearing aid seller who placed newspaper advertisements and social media posts suggesting that it was providing government stimulus money to customers, that there was government stimulus money available to customers to buy their hearing aids. And these letters and the ads were completely false. So, the reports that I said as before, the reports we receive on these kinds of frauds matter, and it will turn into something like a warning letter or an investigation or a complaint. Next slide, please. So we've also brought cases in court, and in many instances, we're seeking a temporary restraining order against companies to halt the bad conduct. One of these cases was against a company on the East Coast that was allegedly claiming to be part of the Small Business Administration's Paycheck Protection Program, but it wasn't. And so what they were doing is they were deceiving small businesses into taking out their loan, claiming that it was part of the Paycheck Protection Program, but it was completely false. It wasn't part of the Paycheck Protection Program. And some of these companies, some of the small businesses, unfortunately, that fell for the scheme, lost out on the opportunity to get into the actual program. And we also brought a case against a company called Whole Leaf Organics, for claiming that its products treated both coronavirus and cancer without any proof that it did either. We've brought a trio of cases in August against some companies that were claiming fast delivery on personal protective equipment like face masks or N95 masks, and they were guaranteeing the next day delivery. And in many instances, these items, came up, didn't get delivered at all. And so what we claimed was that these companies were not only violating the FTC Act for their misrepresentations on delivery, but also the mail internet telephone order rule. We call it the mail order rule. And it's a violation of law to misrepresent when you're going to ship a product. So we sued those. We sued a marketer who was sending out deceptive mailers, touting that there was CARES Act relief, and they were making, false statements that you could pick up your stimulus benefit or prize winnings here. And it was actually just a front for a used car sale. So if you went to the location listed in the fake mailer, you'd end up on a used car lot. So all the references to the CARES Act relief and to prize money was completely false. Next slide, please. So one way to stay on top of this is to sign up for our alerts. We have blog posts, and they'll come to you by email. And this is really good information that you can share with other people. You could forward it to friends and family to share the fraud trends we're seeing. We will post blogs and alerts on frauds even before we bring a case on it. These are emerging trends. So here's a few examples. One of our posts recently was how to stop a real or fake clinical trial and learn how to tell the difference. Because right now there's a lot of talk about being part of a clinical trial, but some of those are completely false. One of the main tips in this blog was that you never have to pay. You should never have to pay to be part of a clinical trial, or even to find out about one. And they will not ask you for your personal information. Now, researchers might want your demographic data if you're going to be part of a clinical trial, but they're not going to ask you for your social security number. That's just not an important piece of information for a researcher. Another blog post is about this waiting package phishing scam. I've gotten a lot of these texts where it says, your package is waiting. We've had your package since March. In fact, you could see that. It's like a little text right there. It says, Thomas, we came across a parcel from March pending for you. Kindly claim ownership and schedule deliver, and that's like misspelled here. And there's a hyperlink, and that's just a link where they can it's probably going to download some malware onto your computer or maybe onto your phone. And some of the telltale signs that this is a scam is, well, one, just kind of that like fake kind of fill in the blank email. But they also have misspellings. And if it says, sometimes it won't even say the name of the company, it'll just have a link. If you're concerned that you're actually getting a text from a FedEx package that is waiting for you, go to FedEx directly. Go to UPS directly. Don't click links that come to you out of the blue, especially if you're not aware of a package that you ordered that was held up. And then there's another blog post that we recently put out about scammers posing as contact tracers. And the contact tracing is where, let's say I were infected with coronavirus, a contact tracer would want to find out all the people that I was in touch with in order to isolate or figure out, where how the virus is spreading, but also to alert other people that they might have it. So these people are posing as fake contact tracers. Don't share your social security number, your personal information with them. Don't share financial information with them. Don't share your immigrant status with them. Don't click links or download anything that's sent by a purported contact tracer. Real contact tracers are, if they send you a text at all or an email, it's only to tell you that they're going to be calling you so that you're on alert for the call. They're not going to ask you to download anything in order to participate in contact tracing. And so if you're unsure if you're dealing with a legitimate request for a contact tracer, call your local health department to see if the person's that is contacting you is legitimate or fake. Next slide, please. Consumer.gov is also an important place where you can go, your clients or your friends and family can go for just some real practical advice. Consumer.gov is a website that was created after getting feedback from legal services providers, groups such as CVIIC, who wanted some information delivered to people that was provided in more of a direct action oriented way. And also just provides like good information just for financial literacy. So the snapshot here is like renting an apartment or a house. Just explains in real basic terms, what does it mean to rent? What does it mean to lease? There are links on how to manage your money. There's a whole section on credit, on loans and debt. And really includes that area, includes a lot of important basics about interest rates and about hidden fees. So it's really easy to understand and very practical advice. So I would urge you to send folks who want some just practical data on financial information to go to consumer.gov. Next slide, please. Also, I just want to let you all know that our resources are available in Spanish and other languages. Our website, including the coronavirus page that you saw earlier, is translated into Spanish. We have resources in other languages like Mandarin, Chinese, Vietnamese, and other languages. And if we go to the next slide, we have a bulk order.ftc.gov. And all of this you can get to it through our website, ftc.gov. But we have booklets and materials that you can order. And it can come to you for free by mail. But some of this you don't even need in the color copy. You can just download the PDF, which is available online. You can print off whatever it is that you need for your next meeting. If you want to cover, say, identity theft, or you want to cover immigration scams, or you want to cover tech support, you can just download it, or you can circulate it by email. There's all the electronic copies are available. And so here are just some examples of some information that we have in Spanish on various types of fraud. One of them is talking about what to do or how to spot immigration fraud. Another one is about a plan of action if you're a victim of identity theft. The one that looks like a bookmark is talking about the tech support scams. And then finally, there is what we call telenovelas, or fotonovelas, which are kind of like comic strip-like books, and set out everyday scenarios that consumers face, explaining to consumers how to spot the real deal from the scammer and what to do if you fall victim. Next slide. I want to talk a little bit about Reportfraud.gov. So this is where you can report a fraud. This is, as I mentioned, this is recently launched, which makes it easier than our prior website to report scams and bad business practices. You don't have to be a victim of a fraud to report fraud. You can just report as an FYI. I received this mailer. This is the company. This is what it says. It looks suspicious. You also don't have to provide your personal information. A lot of people are really concerned with, stepping forward to identify themselves for the federal government because they're not sure what people are going to do with that information, especially if they're concerned about revealing immigration status. First of all, our complaint website does not ask about immigration status, but you can report fraud anonymously. You can also report fraud on behalf of clients as an organization. So if CVIIC has lots of clients that are reporting a certain type of fraud, CVIIC itself can put a fraud report to alert us as to a type of fraud that's happening among its client pool. So it makes it easy. Reportfraud.gov, it's reportfraud.ftc.gov. It makes it easier to for us to see what kind of fraud is affecting your community. The features are now, there are questions that people have to answer that give details on what happened, which will help us categorize the type of fraud it is. But also another important feature is that after a report is submitted, and if the consumer provides their email, they're going to get the report number so they can update it with follow-up information on what's happened after the initial report, which is helpful. And they will also receive an email with some advice on what to do next. And that's something new. We didn't often get in touch with consumers. We took in the reports, but there will be now an email with some advice about what they can do next, where they could go for further relief. And for Spanish speakers, they can file the reports. It's the same thing, but it's Reportfraud.ftc.gov, and we'll get the information in Spanish as well. So we have information on Reportfraud.gov available to our law enforcement partners, our nonprofit partners, so that they can share it forward. This is a new website, so we really urge you to share this with the communities that you serve. And you can get web badges and other links and materials to share at reportfraud.ftc.gov/partners. And there you can get information so you can share with your communities. Next slide, please. So just to sort of sum up, we just really urge you to stay informed. You can get consumer alerts that I talked about, like the blogs and the email alerts at ftc.gov/subscribe to learn more about COVID-19's financial impact and all the data that we've collected, and some of the practical tips. You can go to ftc.gov/financial impact. Again, report fraud. We want you to report the scams you're seeing. It's important not just to us, but to our law enforcement partners throughout the country. And then you can also share resources by going to our bulk order, bulkorder.ftc.gov/publications. You don't need to get the actual items shipped to you by mail. You can download them and print them off yourself, or just email them around electronically. Some resources on where to go for actual coronavirus information and federal government response. The umbrella website would be usa.gov/coronavirus to find out what the FTC is doing specifically and what information we have available. You can go to ftc.gov/coronavirus. And next slide, please. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Again, I really appreciate CVIIC inviting me to speak to you all today about some of the frauds and scams that we're seeing, and just giving us the opportunity to share our resources that we have for the public. And I really just urge you to not just become informed yourselves, but to pass it forward to your people in your communities and the folks that you work with, because that's really how we can avoid frauds. I mean, once someone falls victim, it's too late. We don't want them to fall victim in the first place. And the way to do that is to empower people with knowledge about what's out there.
Maricela, thank you very much for the presentation, and we'll open it up for question and answer. If you have a question, please raise your hand and we'll unmute you so you can ask the question. But there is also in the Q&A tab, there is a question from Carmen Becerra, who asks, what about, I guess you were talking about vacation related scams. She asked, what about vacation offers or hotels when they say they are the Marriott company? What can be done in situations like that?
Is this a situation where a company pretends to be the Marriott and they're not, where that's just a complete fake?
Correct. That seems to be the question. And
Yeah.
Carmen is still online, so if you'd like to clarify, Carmen, by all means, raise your hand and we'll unmute you.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, if you feel like you paid a fake company for something, if you did it by credit card, I mean, one option would be to seek the charge back if you feel like you were defrauded. And so there are some protections when you pay via credit card to get the charge back. You know, when you feel just, I think one piece of advice is before you make a big purchase, try to check it out. Like if it's something that's coming to you out of the blue, some offer, go to the actual website of the actual business first, especially if you're going to put down a lot of money on some offer that might sound almost a little too good to be true. Check it out. Do a little homework first to make sure that it's legit. But you know, with the credit card purchase, you often have a chargeback option. If you pay, you know, via one tip that you're dealing with a fraudster is that they often want you to pay through an unreversible means. They don't want you to pay by credit card. They want you to pay by gift card or like basically what's equivalent to cash, which would be, you know, a money transfer. So that's often a tip you're dealing with a disreputable actor.
Karen, would you like to add anything else?
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So about that. So I get calls all the time and it always says it's like some like the Marriott or like some type of place. Where can I go so that they don't call me? Can I do anything about that? And I've also had the instance where like my own phone number is calling me. So yeah. I don't even know, what do you do about that? Because what other people get phone calls from your number, but it's not you?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So, you know, unfortunately, the scammers they can spoof numbers. So that's when it looks like your own phone number is calling you, they're spoofing your number. You can block numbers. You can go on ftc.gov /robocalls, and there will be instructions on how to block a number from calling you. Numbers are like candy, like they can get a new number and you might get the calls from another number, but you can proactively block numbers. Now, you might also connect with your phone service, with your cellular provider to find out what they have available to you, how you can block scam calls. I have a feature where it says scam call likely or scam likely, and that usually means that number has been identified as a potential scam. And so when I see that as identified scam likely, I just don't pick up the phone at all. And unfortunately, that, you know, there are some of these calls are not made within, you know, our country, and they're like coming from other parts of the world, and it's easy to make over the internet thousands of calls a minute. So I think it's almost impossible to block them on the whole, but you can block individual numbers, and you can also work with your provider to see if they can put a little scam alert on your phone so that at least it pops up as scam likely as opposed to a legitimate call.
Thank you very much. Judy Moxley from Maricela Adult School was asking if we were going to be getting a recording of this to all who are on the call. So we're going to be uploading it hopefully very soon to the civic.org website. And if Maricela is okay with it, we'll also send the PDF version to everyone who registered for the webinar. So you will have access to it.
Sure.
Other questions that you might have, please raise your hand or type in the chat box. Oh, from Janie Flores, Maricela, are you available for additional presentations?
Sure. I mean, you know, and Jamie, you can email me directly. I think, you know, it depends on schedule and availability, but you know, we're always available to do some consumer outreach, and it's an important part of our mission, not just the enforcement stuff. I mean, but and it may not just be me, it could be other people in my office. So reach out to me if you have an opportunity to do outreach to the public. Do we do Spanish presentations? Yes, we can. I was saying to Jesus, my Spanish is a little rusty, but I can do it. But I also have there are other people in our agency who can do presentations in Spanish to the public. You know, and for any presentation, what we would ask, just because our resources are limited in terms of time and people, is that if you can organize an event with, you know, at least a decent number of folks, and we might be able to help you.
A question related to that, Maricela. Do you have presentations in other languages as well? Because some of the partners who are in the call today work with other immigrant communities, for example, who might speak some other language other than Spanish and English.
We do have some languages, some materials available in other languages. We have like one sheets on coronavirus scams available in Mandarin Chinese, I believe Vietnamese, and now I'm going to go to the internet. I think we have ftc.gov languages where it has our resources available. But yes, we do. So if somebody has a need for information in another language, I guess I would just urge them to reach out to me or reach out to you, and then you can reach out to me and we can direct them to the source of information.
But I have been one of the persons who has requested materials from the FTC in the past in multiple languages. We've been sharing them in events over the years. So I would invite everyone to go to the bulk order URL that you shared with us earlier, where you can order materials or download it and you can print it on your own. They're very useful materials with lots of information and obviously trustworthy.
Yeah, and if you go to, if you just do ftc.gov/languages, you'll see consumer resources. I see there's simplified Chinese, there's Korean, Spanish, Vietnamese, Tagalog, and there's other languages. So you might be able to find what you need on that. And then certainly bulk order will have the resources that we have in other languages.
Okay, thank you. Any other question or comment? If not, I'd really like to thank everyone who joined us. I know right now everyone's eager to go to lunch and get some rest also from the post-electoral stress that everybody's undergoing. But I really
Not
want
post.
it's not post yet. I also want to really thank Maricela for this very extensive and detailed presentation that allowed us to learn a lot of what is going on in the real world. All of us probably have a little bit of information about things that are taking place, but you really gave us a very broad perspective, but also going in depth into many of these very relevant topics. So I really appreciate it. And thank everyone who joined us. Thanks to Elazar and Elazari, our civic team members who are also helping us with the logistics of this event. So thank you, everyone. And once again, we will be sending the PDF to everyone who registered. If you have not received it by tomorrow, please send me an email and I'll make sure that you get it. And we'll be uploading the video later on to our civic.org website, but give us a little bit of time for that as well.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you to Jesus and thank you to Civic for organizing this event. It was our pleasure, my pleasure.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye.